So recently I went to my local used bookstore and I picked up this Stanislaw Lem novel for only $4. And it seems like a great deal, right? Because it's a great author, it's a nice big fat book called Fiasco. Well, unfortunately, this is probably his worst novel. I haven't read all of them, but I think this one, it would be hard to beat in terms of quality. So, it begins with a man named Parvis, a space cadet who goes to the planet Titan, Jupiter's moon that probably has a ocean underneath the surface, which doesn't get mentioned in this book, and there's a mining colony there. And there's a crater that is being explored, and Pirks, who's from Stanislaw Lem's other novels, Pirks the Pound, more Tales of Pirks the Pound, which are better than this book, descends in a mech suit that is about 8 stories tall, this massive thing produced by Rolls-Royce, goes into the crater and disappears, and Parvis elects to go in after him. Now, Parvis's mech is equipped with a cryogenic freezing unit to be used as a last resort, in case anything deadly happens. Then you use this cryogenic freezing right before you would die, and we can resurrect you sometime in the future when we have the technology to do such a thing. And obviously he does. He gets caught in a sort of crystal forest, and he activates the cryogenic freezing. Now, all of this is very good up to this point. The description of Titan is very interesting. The mech suits are really interesting. The adventure itself was told in a very gripping way, although I didn't get that across very much. But I want you to remember that this first part of the book is really good, to me anyway. It was very interesting. I want you to remember that because it does not matter. That entire first part does not impact the rest of the book at all. Later on, a spaceship flying by Titan finds these bodies and brings them aboard. And they have the technology to reheal them cryogenically, so they bring them back to life, and they don't really know anything about them except their names. And they're only able to bring back one person, not like all 4 of them, but the only one they're able to bring back, they're only able to bring it back by compositing some of his body parts between 2 of the astronauts. So the person that they bring back is actually a composite of Pirks and Parvis, which is sort of interesting. It makes you think, this sounds like it's the basis for some kind of philosophy here. Like, this person is like a composite of 2 intelligences. What does that do? Do they interplay with each other? Does this person feel like a monster? Do they feel the same? Is their arm like, if you had somebody else's arm, would it feel different? Would it feel like it was yours? It sounds like the basis for some philosophy, but that's never gone into. In fact, this main character who gets reanimated and goes from the past to the future, his entire plot is superfluous. It doesn't mean anything in this book at all. He does nothing from this point on. He doesn't even remember the first part of the book. As far as he's concerned, he just woke up. And I tried to think for a while, if the first part is thematically relevant or has some kind of philosophy to it that makes it similar to the rest of the book, but the answer is no, it doesn't, which is extremely disappointing. So this person's brought on a ship that is on its way to go find an alien planet. Well, they've already picked out the planet. It's a planet that has a 99.99999% chance of developing life on it. So they're speeding there at high speeds, light speed that is, to find the aliens that are on this planet, if there are any. Because Fermi's paradox is very real in Stanislaw Lem's books, even in his books that have to do with first contact, which is a lot of them. The theme of Fermi's paradox is very much real, which sort of posits that it's impossible for human beings and aliens to ever come into contact with each other. One of these reasons is just proximity. humans and aliens next to each other would have to be like this close in a universe as big as ours is. And they would also have to happen at the exact same time, too. The universe is just as old as it is large, and civilizations will be popping up and dying off in the span of less than a fraction of a millisecond. So to have two of them converge is already nearly possible in itself. But this book offers an alternative explanation in one of its many philosophical tangents, which I found pretty interesting, which is that civilizations, once they reach a certain technological level, actually achieve escape velocity. Their technology rockets upwards, and they actually transcend their physical forms. They become immaterial. I guess it'd be like uploading your intelligence into Google Cloud or something, or physically transferring your intelligence or your body, your soul, into like energy particles that fly around, perhaps. So there could be aliens around us all the time, right now, right as we know it, but we just don't know that they exist because they're non-Euclidean. They are ineffable. Our machines can't even pick them up. We can't talk to them, but maybe they can see us. And that's very interesting. Stanislaw Lem, I don't think, ignores the spiritual implications of this either. There's a Dominican friar on board the ship for some reason who's sort of overseeing how these people keep the interests of the Catholic Church as well as science for some reason. I guess the Church has a lot more sway in this future. And, well, the people on this ship are all just blank slates. They're just names on the page. I can't really tell you anything about all of them, except for our main hero who, died, came back to life, yada yada, and he's like the only person on the ship that can actually do math with like a paper and pencil, instead of just ignoring all that and letting the computer do all of that, which is what the other people in this book do. Because there is a artificial intelligence on the ship called Deus that they talk to for everything, and he comes into play later. But all of the characters on board this ship are blank slates. They have no personality whatsoever, and this can be fine. It can be acceptable. Like in The Invincible, for instance, another book by Stanislaw Lem, basically the same thing happens. When you're writing a book, you don't always want to have one central main character, or like you don't want to have to flesh out a whole crew of people. Sometimes you just want to write a book that explores an interesting concept, and all you need to do that is just have a bunch of people and have all of them have no development whatsoever. They're just names. They're just tools to get the plot going, and I guess it can be fine if you're not writing something that's character driven. If you're writing something super stoic and philosophical like this book, then it can work, I guess. But the main character's like that, and he has an interesting story, and something should be going on with him, but there isn't. And the fact that nothing's going on with him means that the entire first 60 pages of this 320-page book were completely superfluous. And that just is an indicator that this book is bad, and Stanislaw Lem cobbled it together, which is a real shame. Now, remember that thing about transcending that I told you about? Yeah, they refer to it as the window. There's the window, which the bottom part of the window is when an alien species is technologically advanced enough to have faster than light travel. There's starfarers, basically, and the top of the window is when they transcend. Within this tiny window is the only time when humanity can possibly contact them. And that is the window that they're trying to get to in this book. I mean, this whole philosophy is only described one time, near the beginning, but I thought it was going to be the basis of the book. Here's what I thought the book was going to be, and I feel like it would be a much more interesting book, is that these people they find a planet that probably is going to harbor life, and then they say, let's go, because the only way to get there and maybe be within the window is to start moving as the society is developing, because that's how faster than light travel works. Time passes very, very, very fast while you're traveling very, very fast. So to get anywhere, you need to take thousands of years. So when they get to Quinta, which the name of this planet is Quinta, by the way, when they get there, they find that the Quintans have already escaped the window. They're immaterial. They're like ghosts flying in and out of the atmosphere. They try to pick up recordings of them. It's just nonsense. They fly in and out of the ship. They phase through walls. They can barely pick them up on their scanners or whatever. They project images into their minds or hallucinations, just like in Solaris. And it's all very Star Trek-y and nightmarish. And the humans decide to give up trying to contact them because they have no idea what's going on. So then they decide to turn around and go back to Earth. But then, by the time they get back to Earth, humanity has escaped the window. So now they are just this lone spaceship in the middle of an uncaring universe full of probably the only people left alive that were ever, that are not past the window or below it. A very sad ending, and that's the fiasco of the book's title. I thought that would be very interesting, but that's not what the book is at all. The book is much less interesting than that. I should probably write that down, actually. That could be my own book. But back to this one. It's the kind of book that's like 90% philosophy and 10% actually story. Well, I say it's 90% philosophy, but it's more like 45% philosophy and 45% made-up technobabble, because for some reason Stanislaw Lem focuses a lot on that in this book. There's a lot of descriptions of how the ship's engine works and, sidereal engineering and quantum physics and all this stuff that doesn't really matter. And there's even like a whole chapter going off about this one guy telling a story about a fake Mayan expedition that's a piece of mythology, and it turns out that the people he's telling it to were just projections on a screen. And then another chapter where he's talking about how one time he went to South America and retrieved an artifact that made ants attracted to him, and then he went home and still has the artifact, and it turns out he just made that story up and it wasn't true. Those two chapters I just told you about are just another red herring in this story. It's just a big question mark for me. I don't know what relevance that has. But once they finally get to the planet Quinta, it sort of turns into a morality tale. The ship circles Quinta for about, a few months trying to contact the aliens. They send down, patterns of sound, Morse code, English, saying, hello, we're here. Just anything to imply we are intelligent and we want to talk to you. And the Quintans don't respond. And the people on the ship get pretty uneasy about this. They ask Deus, their computer, what's up. Deus, of course, in classic Stanislaw Lem fashion, the computer Deus is only as good as the humans that are controlling it. So often Deus will lead them astray or lie to them, because it'll say, well, I was programmed by humans, what do you expect? Everything that is coming out of me is coming from you. And that's a little bit of philosophy that's sort of interesting, I suppose, but that sort of works into the theme of miscommunication, because that's what Stanislaw Lem is all about. It's all about how we can't possibly understand alien intelligence, or about how we have trouble understanding AI. Stanislaw Lem is really big into robotics, just as much as he was into aliens, as can be seen in Solaris, psychologically speaking. But they have a lot of misunderstandings with the Quintans that lead to violent and bloody consequences, because the humans in this book are so stupid. I'm just going to say it. They're really stupid. They make all these assumptions about the Quintans. They assume that just because they have a moon that they once colonized, and their home planet, and no other planets, somehow from that, and also from the fact that there's a bunch of debris in both their atmospheres, they conclude that there's like a thermonuclear war and there's two factions on the planet. First of all, how do you know that they're at war? How do you know that they're using thermonuclear weapons? How do you know that there's only two factions instead of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and that some of them are neutral? How do you know any of this? It's sort of their attempt to explain why the Quintons aren't communicating, because they're worried that the humans are gonna take a side and they just want them to go away, maybe. That's an explanation. Maybe the aliens want you to go away. Maybe they don't want to communicate at all, and there's no thermonuclear war. Maybe the aliens aren't at war. Maybe the reason the aliens haven't gone past their planets is because they just don't have the ambition that humans do. Like, any sane human being reading this book will be in the middle of like a 30-second page of people philosophically debating the thermonuclear war that's definitely happening down on Quinta right now, and just say, now wait a second, let's just think for this for a second. This is an alien species. We have no idea what they're doing down there. And even a doofus like me is saying that. And these people are supposed to be highly trained scientists. It doesn't make any sense. It's supposed to be a morality tale about miscommunication and how it results in bad, horrible consequences because humans transpose their own experiences onto other things and onto alien species. But it has to happen to real people in order for it to make sense or hit home at all. And unfortunately it doesn't. It happens to a bunch of names on the page. And it happens to a bunch of stupid characters, but it doesn't happen to real people. And I said it resulted in bloody consequences, right? Well, what are those consequences? Well, they decide to have a show of force. They decide that in order to establish contact with the Quintons, they have to show that, yes, our ship is armed and we are deadly. Don't ignore us. For some reason, they think that this is the only thing to do. They shoot a rocket at the moon, the Quintons' moon, thinking it'll just blow up and they'll see how strong we are. And at the same time, the Quintons shoot their own rocket, and it deflects off their rocket, sending it on a new trajectory into the heart of the moon, and it blows up a huge, huge part of the moon, and it all comes falling into the Quintons' atmosphere and slams against the ground and causes a selenoclasm, which is a word Lem invented in this book, and doubtlessly kills millions. They don't have any official reports or video of what happened down there, but they can see, even from orbit, that that moon went into that planet and caused a disaster. But the people in this book don't care at all. They are horrible, sycophantic people. They see that and they think they probably deserved it. They are a horrible, warlike race for what they did. What they actually think was that the Quintons intentionally sent the missile to deflect their missile into the exact spot. Like, they had it mathematically worked out precisely so that they could send the moon down and destroy their own planet. Like, they think either they're creating a false flag, like a false flag operation against the humans, or they are attacking the other side in their thermonuclear war that totally happened. Or what they don't even consider is maybe the Quintons are just stupid. Maybe they just act without thinking. Maybe they didn't mathematically plan it. Maybe it was an independent terrorist organization that sent out the missile. Maybe it's just some dude in his backyard that has a missile. They don't know anything about Quinta or how it works, but they make all these assumptions. And, yeah. Not to mention there's also the end of the book, which at the end of the book, the main character goes down to the planet and he tries poking around to see what's up, what's going on, because the Quintons had finally invited him down to the planet for a peace discussion, and he thinks, well, this is probably a trap or something. So if after 20 minutes I don't come back up, do a little bit more than a show of force towards the planet. And the people on the ship agree. They actually have the weapons capacity to destroy basically the entire planet. And they're going to do it if after 20 minutes Pierce/Purvis does not respond to their messages or does not come back to the ship. So Pirks or Parvis goes down to the planet and he finds nobody around. He's wondering what's going on. Where's the welcoming committee? Where are all the Quintons? He's expecting things that are walking around on all fours or two legs, all fours, whatever. And all he finds is a strange building. He goes inside the building and it looks like a giant amphitheater with a potted plant in the front that glows like a crystal. And all he can conclude from this is that this is the Quintons' odd way of saying welcome. Here's something that'll make you feel at home. Which that's kind of creepy, because we don't know if that's what their intention was, and he's just sitting there like, where are the Quintons? So then he leaves the building and starts poking around, and he eventually discovers that the Quintons are all around him. They're the hills themselves. The hills have white membranous, like pulsating veins inside them. So the Quintons are just the hills. Maybe they're a hive mind, who knows? But who knows, because Pirks forgets to respond after 20 minutes, and as he looks out, he sees, oh no, there's missiles coming down, the sky is falling, and the entire planet blows up, and that's the end of the book. Yeah, Stanislaw Lem is known as being kind of a comedic author. He has a subtle hint of comedy or parody and dark humor in all of the books he writes, and the ending of this book definitely sounds like a punchline. Let's see what the final line actually is. The slope was covered with throngs of naked, defenseless warts. As the towering spiderweb in the antennas, breaking, fell upon him in flames, he realized that he had seen the Quintons. The end. Like, right as stuff is blowing up, he's like, oh, now I understand. It reads like a punchline, which is what Stanislaw Lem does, but in this case it's just really angering. Like, after the first 60 pages, I was really interested in this book. I was really into it. I was really hooked by that cool adventure introduction and the weird vitrifax cryogenic system that Pirks or Parvis was sucked into. And then the rest of the book, I was like, Mayan adventure, ants, Dominican friar, a bunch of philosophy, sidereal engineering, okay. It slid into apathy. Oh, well, it'll get better by the time the book is over. And then it slid into resentment. And then the book ended, and I was just dancing on the back cover, like, yay, I'm finally done with this book. So as you can see, I was very disappointed by this book. It was sort of a moral story about miscommunication which just really fell flat. One more thing I want to mention is that this is an extremely masculine book. Like, if an alien species read this book, non-Euclidean or not, I was thinking about this while I was reading, if an alien species read this book, non-Euclidean or not, to understand what human beings were like, they literally would not know that women exist. None of the characters in this book are women. There are no mentions to women. In most books, there's usually a woman. There's like a dead wife, a girlfriend who has no purpose, a woman who's just there to be hot. This book has nothing like that. There's no mentions to women at all. The only woman in this book is like a character has a dream about going to Venice, and it mentions a girl runs past him. That's the only real, non-theoretical woman in the entire book. And it goes beyond that. Like, the whole book is really stoic, esoteric, emotionless, impersonal, no emotions. That's very masculine. It's all about philosophy and, explaining technology. Technology. Here's how things work. That's a very masculine thing. And there's even a part where it mentions that the ship comes equipped with like a movie theater and a bar and all this, and a pool and all this stuff that sounds cool. But it makes a point of the main characters not liking it. It even says that the main character himself, Pirks/Parvis, thinks that it's stupid. In his own words, it's stupid to go do those things. What he'd rather do, according to the book, is sit in the warehouse and watch the machines work. and watch the engine of the ship do its job. He does that when he has free time. Like, come on, man. That's not what men really do. That's like an idealized version of what they do. So that's just one more thing I wanted to add, was that this is an extremely masculine book, in addition to being very bad, honestly. I mean, a lot of other Stanislaw Lem's books are good, like The Invincible, Tales of Pirks the Pilot. I like those books. But this book, the last book he ever wrote, 1987, Fiasco, was bad. And I'm pretty sure I know why. This was the only book that Stanislaw Lem only received a payment in advance for. The only one. And those first 60 pages that I keep talking about, it was actually a short story that he repurposed for this book. And no doubt all the philosophy and fake engineering bullcrap in there was probably just repurposed fragments of treatises on science fiction and science and philosophy that he never turned into a full work. So he just mashed it all together, made a lump of clay, turned it into the publisher, said, haha, I've already cashed the check, and then left. Which is really disappointing, because this was his final novel. He should have at least written something okay. He didn't have to finish on a magnum opus, but he at least shouldn't have left on like a cynical cash grab, basically. This book is really disappointing. I would not recommend it. It was pretty bad. It's really boring. And I suppose that's all I have to say. See you later.